What was your worst I overslept experience? Woke up at 4 p.m. for a 2 p.m. exam. Got into the exam hall when everyone else was handing in their exams. I wasn't allowed to write. Begged over email for a chance to write the exam. They agreed with certain conditions attached. Exam would only be worth 3/4 of what it normally is, and my final grade also capped at 70%. I finished and got 70%. Later went on to drop out anyway. I almost missed my college graduation because I had been up for days working on my final thesis. Graduation morning I was ready and was going to close my eyes for 20 minimums. I woke up and graduation was in 10 minutes. Never ran so fast in my life. Not me, but one of my old teachers. When he was in college he had a huge final coming up in a few days, and he had already spent the last few days pulling all-nighters and cramming. The final was on a Friday, and he decided he would get some sleep Thursday morning after another all-nighter. When he woke up, he asked his roommate what time it was. His roommate said, "It's 2 o'clock. Do you wanna know what day it is?" As it turned out, he slept from Thursday morning all the way to Saturday afternoon and completely missed his final. Luckily he immediately ran to find his professor, and she told him he could take it right then and there or else he got a 0. My GF was graduating college. She was French, and so a lot of her relatives took the flight over to see her walk the stage too. While I turned off the alarm while still asleep, I rushed to where the ceremony was, and people were coming out. Terrible. Waking up in a blind panic, getting dressed rapidly, and rushing to work to arrive sweating, only to discover I wasn't in that day. I disputed a fine, and was to present in front of a judge to explain it. I arrived 15 minutes late, hair's still wet, and with mismatched socks. I was struggling to attach a tie too. The judge was not impressed, rejected my dispute, and gave me a sermon about punctuality. That oversleeping cost me $600 and some dignity. In November, I came an hour late to my security job. Apparently I set my Google Home alarm at the wrong time. I felt bad because the person I relief is really nice and her husband was waiting to leave also. To make things worse, she told me that her other relief comes late often, and one time he came an hour late and he kept calling dispatch saying that he is close by. I just started working there in October, so I didn't want to be that guy shows up super late. At my first job, one night I forgot to set my alarm and overslept. I'd never been late to work before and was in tears, convinced I was going to be fired. My mom calmed me down and got me to work. No one even cared, so I panicked for nothing. I overslept because of alarm clock failure on a morning I was to play the organ for a 9 a.m. funeral. When the church office called, wondering why I wasn't there early as usual, I scrambled to get moving, making it to the church just as the hearse was pulling up to the front door to bring in the coffin. My roommate freshman year of college turned my phone alarm off one morning and I missed a final. Still salty. Not strictly oversleeping, but about 10 years ago, I moved from Austria to Berlin, Germany. So, as an Austrian, you're used to a whole bunch of public holidays. Austria is, at least officially, very Catholic, so every semi-important Catholic holiday is also a public one. Berlin on the other hand is the complete opposite. Very few public holidays. We recently got a new one, International Women's Day, March 8th. Yay. Even amongst all the other German states, they sometimes call it the atheist capital of Europe. So, anyway, yet another of these holidays came up, so I thought great, I can just stay in bed, chillax, maybe order a pizza. At around 1 p.m, just when I was about to order some food, I got a text message from a work colleague. "Hey, why aren't you in the office?" I was shocked. What's going on? Why are my colleagues at work? So I looked up holidays in Berlin, and only then I realized that today wasn't a holiday here. So I quickly packed my stuff, went to the office, and told them that I overslept. Fortunately, my job back then had flexi time, so all I had to do was work later in the evening. It was a hard-learned lesson about how Berlin has very few actual holidays, and never even got to order that pizza. I was doing my GCSEs, and I stayed up at night, oversleeping and therefore missing my English listening exam. It was mandatory to move on to year 12 and my only options were either to take a gap year in order to do the Oct/Novik, since the result would come out in Jan, and then head to uni/year 12, or repeat the year. And of course I had to repeat the year, because my mother said there's no way I'm taking a gap year. Missing what was probably going to be the easiest test ever wasted an entire year of my life. First period teacher in high school was an asshole who made a big stink when students showed up late. Me being the timid student that I was feared this heavily, so I made sure to be on time to avoid the embarrassment. One morning I woke up and realized I slept in and had very little time to get to school. I got changed in record speed and was out my door in minutes. The walk normally took about 15 minutes. I was at the front doors of the school in like 7 minutes, but the doors were locked. It was Saturday. Open bracket. I have insomnia, and it gets really bad when I'm stressed. I was going through a depressive episode in my first year of university, and I was unable to sleep one night before a midterm, which was at like 2:30 PM the following afternoon. So I studied around 8 AM to 10 AM. Then I finally felt sleepy, so I went to take a nap. I set my alarm for like 12 PM and everything. For some cruel reason, it didn't go off. I woke up at 3 PM. Words cannot describe the chill that went down my back when I saw 3 PM on the clock. I jumped out of bed and was at the bus stop in 5 minutes. I ran to the lecture hall where the midterm was taking place in record time, but my school has a rule that after a half hour, you're not allowed in the room. With a 0 on this midterm, I would fail the class, and I couldn't drop it because I was already at the minimum classes needed to sustain full-time status. And if I lost full-time status, my school funding would be revoked. So I went home and cried for literally 12 hours and had to call a helpline to calm me down. The guy on the end, who sat there on the phone with me for legit 2 hours, and is probably the reason I didn't do something drastic, because it felt like my world was ending, suggested getting a medical exemption on the basis of mental health, and I was lucky enough to have seen a counselor the week before this all happened, so I got the note and was able to write a makeup test. The rest of that semester was shit and I only finished the class with a D+, failing another class, which didn't impact my funding. But I got through it and that's what matters. I recently retook the class and got an A+ in it. Anyways, that was my worst experience in oversleeping. I had stayed up all night reviewing notes for a final. Set my alarm, planning to wake early, get a good breakfast, clear my head, and do some last minute reviewing. Woke up and noticed the natural lighting inside of my room wasn't right and saw that my alarm had not gone off, and my final was in like 10 minutes. I had to do a half-awake panicky routine of triaging my hygiene needs, brush hair, put on hoodie, run out the door in that plus PJ pants, and flip-flops and sprint to my classroom on the other side of campus. Got in just as the exam started. Passed it with an A. Back in my university days I was pulling an all-nighter studying for the final of my freshman year. Was trying to transfer schools, and I needed a 4.0 to balance out my lackluster grades from college credit courses in high school. Woke up with chemical books scattered all around me at 8:15 AM. Midterm started at 8 and the cutoff for entry was 8:30. Got up and sprinted what must have been almost a mile. I lived off campus. When I burst into the lecture hall, the tar grinned and assured me I had made it in time, sliding the scantron across my desk. I put my head down for the next several minutes. Ended up scoring a 97% and that's the story of how I narrowly escaped Texas R&M. Howdy motherfuckers. Hook 'em. When I was in college I had to go home for a doctor's appointment one day, and so I had to take the 2-hour bus ride back to Chicago. I stupidly drank the night before and woke up later than I wanted. I didn't have a ride, so I had to walk to the gas station, where the bus stop is, which was about 2 to 3 miles from campus, and across a highway. It was really stupid of me, but it was early enough that there weren't any cars. I'm about 100 feet away from the gas station and I see my bus pulling away. I chased after it, but the driver didn't see me, and he pulled onto the on-ramp. I had no choice but to sit at that gas station and wait 2 hours until the next bus came, because there was no point walking back to campus.